Amelia Dyer is possibly Britain's most prolific serial killer. She killed for money, her victims being babies born to unmarried mothers who couldn't care for them. She managed to evade the police for decades, using aliases and moving from house to house, despite young mothers and the police trying to find out what had happened to their babies. The body of a baby that she'd murdered and had thrown into the river was found and traced back to her address. Up until this point, she'd narrowly managed to escape arrest on several occasions, even pretending to be insane and ending up in a mental hospital. Amelia Elizabeth Hobley had been born at Pyle Marsh near Bristol in 1839, the youngest of 5 children, to shoemaker Thomas Hobley and his wife Sarah. She went to a fee-paying church school to be educated and had a comfortable childhood until her mother caught typhus. She would hallucinate, and Dyer was expected to help look after her. This allowed her to later feign insanity. In 1861, she married George Thomas, a man more than 30 years her senior, and following the marriage went on to train as a nurse at Bristol Royal Infirmary. In 1864, when she was 26, she fell pregnant with their first child. She was forced to leave nursing when she began to show, as was custom, but soon found another way to make money. Ellen Dane was a midwife and became Dyer's lodger. She made extra money by offering to help pregnant women who wanted to keep their pregnancies quiet, and offered an additional service of adopting out the unwanted babies. Dyer saw this was a fairly easy way to make cash, so it was something she knew she could do, thanks to her nursing skills. When her husband, George, died in 1869, she was left a single mother to Ellen, and knew she would struggle financially, so turned to baby farming. Her first step, however, was to farm out her own daughter. Dyer's adverts began appearing in the local papers. She allowed women to stay at her home as they began to show, until they gave birth. Then they would leave with their baby, or leave the child behind for Dyer to look after for a weekly fee, or put the baby up for adoption for a larger fee. But it wasn't her intention to do that. Often she would smother the baby at birth, so it would look like a stillbirth. Underfeeding a child to kill them was too noisy, so they were given laudanum or brandy to quieten them down. Laudanum dulled the need for food, so some of them starved to death. She herself self-medicated, taking laudanum to possibly make what she was doing more acceptable. In 1872, she married William Dyer, and went on to have 2 children by him, Mary Ann, known as Polly, and William Samuel. Dyer lost her job, so she returned to baby farming. In 1879, 4 of the children she was caring for died within the space of 2 weeks, and this led to both the doctor who certified them and the police to become suspicious. Inquests were ordered into the deaths. Dyer, meanwhile, decided to take a massive laudanum overdose, taking 2 bottles of it. It was enough to kill anyone who did this, but it never killed her, as she was so used to taking it. She was arrested and sentenced to 6 months in prison with hard labour. She was 46. On her release, Dyer returned to baby farming. Now she was murdering them rather than starving them to death. Her routine became that she would go to the town where she was to collect the baby from, get paid, take the baby from its mother, return home, then take out some dressmaker's tape, tie it round the baby's neck, and pull. The baby would stop breathing. Then she'd place the body in brown paper and tie it up with string before throwing the package into the River Thames, weighed down with bricks. Over time, it seems she became desensitised to what she was doing. As time went on, she focused her attention on wealthier clients, therefore making more money. But in 1890, a young governess would be the undoing of Dyer. The young woman had fallen in love with the master of the house and fell pregnant. She saw an advert in the newspaper from Dyer and eventually moved in with her during her confinement. She was persuaded to leave her baby when it was born, but when she returned a few months later to make the final payment, Dyer handed her a baby, but she knew it wasn't hers. Dyer tried to fob her off, but she stripped the child looking for a birthmark. It wasn't there. She repeatedly tried to gain access to her child, even bringing the police with her, but Dyer managed to put them off by making false statements, saying the baby had been adopted, giving numerous addresses, knowing all along she'd murdered the governess's baby. But now she was under pressure, and with the governess not giving up, Dyer had a mental breakdown and was sent to an asylum. But the timing is interesting. The net was closing in, and the breakdowns were short-lived. So was this a calculated move by Dyer? In the early 1890s, she left the Somerset and Bath lunatic asylum and was sent to the local workhouse where she made friends with widow Jane Smith. She told her she wanted to rescue babies and enticed Smith with promises she knew she wouldn't keep, asking her to call her mother, and she would call her Granny Smith in front of prospective clients. Smith became a servant, cleaning the house and looking after the children, not what she'd hoped for. Babies perpetually came and went, and Smith became suspicious. She didn't know where all these babies were going. At Reading, Smith went to a converted shop which housed the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children Centre, where she saw photographs of children. Mrs. Bennet came out and asked what was wrong, and she told her that she was a nurse for Amelia Dyer, who took these children in, and said they disappeared as quickly as they arrived. Dyer was visited by Charles Bennet asking if she had the correct paperwork and licences, but she said no. He reported her to the police and his head office, and was told to keep her under observation. A few weeks later, Smith noticed a smell emanating from a kitchen cupboard. A lodger also began to complain about the smell, so Dyer got up early one morning and scrubbed it. Then she was seen leaving the house with a brown paper parcel under her arm, claiming she was taking some old clothes to a charity shop. On Tuesday, 30th March 1896, a Thames bargeman saw a package in the river and pulled it out. Inside was the body of a baby girl with dressmaker's tape around her neck. There was also an address in the package, although it said Mrs. Thomas of Pickett Road. By 3rd April, the police were knocking at Dyer's door. She tried to say it wasn't her and had nothing to do with her, but the police were having none of it. They found cupboards full of clothes, letters from mothers, and a jar with tickets for babies' clothes that had been pawned. The evidence was damning, and she was arrested at her home, 45 Kensington Road in Reading. Dyer was charged the following day with murder at Reading Police Station. The charge sheet read that she did feloniously, wilfully, and of her own malice afterthought, kill and murder a certain female infant, Helena Fry, daughter of one Mary Fry. In the cells at the police station, she attempted to take her own life with a shoelace, but her attempt failed. Further evidence came when police dredged the river and a carpet bag weighed down with bricks was found on Friday 10th April 1896 with the body of 4-month-old Doris Marmon. Her mother, Evelina Marmon, a 25-year-old unmarried barmaid, had wanted temporary care for her daughter with Mrs. Harding, as Dyer had called herself, but Dyer had persuaded her to pay £10 and give up the child for adoption. Along with Doris's body was that of 13-month Harry Simmons. This was a key piece of evidence, as a carpet bag was identified by a boy who lived at Dyer's. Her daughter and son-in-law were also arrested as accessories to murder. Mary Ann Palmer and her husband Alfred Ernest Palmer were later released after Dyer confessed to the murders. Did they know what was going on? That remains an unanswered question. Dyer tried to plead insanity to stop herself from being executed, but the jury at her 2-day trial before Mr. Justice Hawkins at the Old Bailey in London said she was sane and found her guilty on Friday 22nd May in less than 5 minutes of deliberation. On Wednesday 10th June 1896, she was hanged at Newgate Jail by James Billington. Over her 30-year career, it's possible she killed up to 400 babies. Amelia Dyer would go down in history as the Angel Maker, the most prolific serial killer in the UK.